And I can put that on the back, yeah. Either way, it was great. No. No. I think we're good. Yeah, today. Okay. I think we should get started because it's 2 minutes after. And we like to start our meetings on time. So, first of all, welcome everyone. You will in a minute. I wanted to watch your pain. So how we're going to manage this today is we're going to first do our ice-breaking exercise, and then we're going to dive right into ethics again, kind of review ethics, and all the moral dilemmas that you ran into this month. I'm expecting a full disclosure on that. And then also, then we'll go from there into developing solutions for those tricky workplace situations. So, as our icebreaker, but also as an introduction to our theme today, I'd like everybody to take this pen and write on your placard with your non-dominant hand in cursive. Don't print, in cursive. Okay? And we're going to have to share this one over here, guys. This is painful. I acknowledge that. Yes, yes. So as you're going through about it, think about the process. So normally, I can write my name just like this. But now, think about the whole process of trying to write it. Whoa, well done. Lowell, it looks like Lowell. It will work. Yeah, you probably better do it right. Whatever's on that is what I'm going to call you, by the way. So, are you opposed to pink? Are you okay with pink? Game day? Okay, game day. Okay. Anybody over here? Wow. Wow. Wow, you guys are pretty darn good. Cody, how'd you do? Oh, good. Oh, and she even added a little bit of back, yes. Okay. So, a little bit about our icebreaker. How did that feel? Uncomfortable. Did you have to think about everything you did? You know, like you spell your name every day and you don't think of every letter. But as you were doing this, L-O-R. So you were uncomfortable, awkward, and you had to think about everything you were doing. Is that pretty much a good summary? So we're going to hold that thought till we go into our solutions thing. But please do keep those things in mind. So now, channeling back to a month ago, we talked about business ethics. So start with it. Business ethics. And the takeaway from that one was, okay, we can't in 60 to 90 minutes change everything about you, or we don't even maybe need to. So business ethics is larger than one class, and our hope was to make you more aware of it. So you were keyed in on it more. You thought about it, is this an ethical decision? Whatever. Did anybody see anything on the news, or did you run into anything this month that you said, ah, this has to do with ethics? Anything? Good. No ethical. Yes, Cody. That's a very good one, Cody.
it's not based on right and wrong.
Those are very interesting discussions. So do you remember the company that we kind of discussed? And have you seen that kind of play out over the last month even more? So on the way home from work yesterday, I was listening, and they were saying that they're now looking for their gas vehicles, and assume that this one is not so much about emissions, but about performance in terms of the cars aren't getting the gas mileage that they thought they would. So you can see that once you start into the scrutiny, you're down the path for a while. So and also that drug company. Remember the drug company? What were they doing? An EpiPen. Drug company. And welcome, by the way. Yes. Yep, they bought EpiPen functionality and raised it, what was it, 200 or 300%. And then they had the other one that bought the cancer drug that did the same thing. The one that bought the cancer drug is now under scrutiny. So, they'll probably back off and say, oh, I'm so sorry, we didn't realize it was unethical. But I think we've brought up a great discussion here is what is the dollar value of ethical? And when is it ethical and when is it good business? And those are difficult questions to ask. But they are things that we should be aware of. But even more difficult to ask, they're even harder to answer. Because as we discussed last month, I don't think any employee of Volkswagen ever got up any morning and said, I think I'll try and bring down our company. And they're getting close. And not only that, but you look at what Volkswagen does to the economy of Germany and what Germany does to the economy of Europe. And so you just think about, here's a couple of ethical decisions that have significant long-term impact on a large portion of a society. So I think that's the takeaway on the ethics is it's not considered as loose as it used to be. In the Gordon Gekko days, it was considered good business to be unethical. Because, if the people you were competing against were ethical, it was just better for your advantage. So we've seen a change in that. So now, this one, actually, guys, this was the hardest one for me to prepare of all the ones that I've done. Because I was looking for a nice little list that would say, here's the top 10 challenges in the workplace, and here's the top 10 solutions. We have plenty of lists of top 10 problems and 0 on top 10 solutions. Because, why? Any ideas? Will my solution always work for your situation? No. Because every situation is different. And so what we're going to talk about today is tools to help you find your way through those workplace problems. And we have our HR group in here that can kind of help us with this. Because sometimes these type of situations fall under their watch a little bit, or at least they're more aware of it. Can we get somebody to shut off the light here so we can see better? Thank you. And before we get started, so let's do a little bit of talking now that we've got the lights low and everybody feels intimate. Okay. A little too much. Okay. Cody, tell me about how it felt to write your name.
I had to really slow down. And I actually got better at it, but towards the end.
Towards the end. And are you proud of this?
Oh.
Okay. Were you kind of proud towards the end?
Yeah, a little bit.
Liking the G. Kind of hard here, liking the G. Tracy. By the way, you guys all did much. You did great with your. Oh, and you didn't probably get this. What we need you to do is take this and write it with your left hand. If your right hand, write it with your in cursive. And some people haven't written in cursive since 4th grade. By the way, I have a great joke for you. I have to tell you this joke. My son, who is in sales and just getting into sales, so he's liking the meals a lot, likes the meal part of this. He came home the other day and he goes, so Mom, I went to lunch today and I had chicken strips and fries. And do you know what the guy across from me said? And I said, I have no idea. He goes, our fourth grade called and said they want their lunch back. So I thought that was pretty cute. So Tracy, back to you and your name. Yes, every step, every line, even how you moved your hand became important because you were thinking about where it connected to the next word, letter. Okay, Mira. Min. No, that's my vision. So, Min. It is a great M. She's got a good slant. Most of us slant the opposite way. She's got a good slant. Anybody have anything else that you wanted to comment on that? Because how you feel about writing your name is exactly how you're going to feel about using some of these tools. They're not going to feel comfortable. If say, I'm one of those that's been used to just kind of managing the situations quickly, and somebody says, now you stop and think about the ramifications of this situation. It's like writing my name with my left hand. Okay, I want to be here, but I'm doing this. And the reason we're doing that is to hopefully give us a couple more tools that we can use to solve some of these situations. So, I sang in the last class, and I didn't really like it. They were polite, but they didn't go, wow, you need to change your day job. So I'm going to go down here. Anybody remember how this song goes from Peter Pan? Following the leader, the leader, the leader. We're following the leader wherever they may go. It's from Peter Pan, and the Lost Boys sing it. And I was in a meeting today with a guy from, or not today, this week, with a guy from Spain. And he's over our watermelon program, and he was trying to do one of those introductory stories about leadership. And here he is in a second language trying to explain something that's pretty dynamic to him. So he told us this great story. And he said he was out in the field looking at onions. And over the hill came this herd of sheep. And the sheep went right around the field, didn't go through the onions, went right where they needed to go, and went right into their little farmyard. And he said, so, who do you think was leading the sheep? Any thoughts on that? Who might have been leading the sheep? The dog. That was my thought. I said the dog. And he goes, no, not the dog. What might be another thought? The shepherd. Shepherd. It wasn't the shepherd either. Here's the spoiler here. It was the donkey. And I don't know if donkeys are more esteemed in Spain than they are here. But it was kind of a breakdown in the meeting because the guy was saying that we're donkeys. But how many times have we been leading people and kind of felt a little bit like this? That maybe we didn't do it quite as good as we wanted to. We managed to get the flock nice and tidily back where it belonged, and so and I even like the way his ears are kind of down there. So that's kind of, we're maybe going back to this little guy as we talk through our training here today. But so that list, I could have come up with the top 500 most common workplace things. So we have interpersonal conflict. Have you ever been in a group that hasn't had some interpersonal conflict? Yeah, exactly. Everybody's good. Everybody's good. Communication problems. Gossip. Gossip is a good one. Bullying and harassment, discrimination, low motivation and job satisfaction, performance issues, perhaps poor job fit. I think every one of us has seen multiple ones of these in action, and maybe even have some personal. So here's our rough sketch of our little shepherd here. So typical workplace challenges, again, this is more from the employee or the team colleague portion of it. Passive-aggressive behavior within a team. Hiding behind emails. How many of you just get tired of that? Always having to be right, a lack of emotional competence, and micromanagement. So these were things that were listed by employees in their typical work challenges. So that made me think again about some of the class topics that we've had and how these could be considered tools to help us deal with some of those situations. And the things that we have learned in those classes can help us deal with some of those situations. The problem is, if you're like me, what's going through your head right now is, what do I remember from any one of these? Because that's the way we're wired. We probably have internalized one, maybe two things, and have been using them. But now it's switched from left-hand writing to right-hand writing. And that's really what we want to do with these skills. So we've had something about effective meetings. And effective meetings can significantly impact how an organization functions, just as ineffective meetings can push it the other way. Performance evaluation, definitely a critical component. Effective communication, focusing on being aware of personality styles. So it's not just what I bring into the conversation, but what the individual that I'm discussing this with or conversing with brings to the conversation. Time management, delegation, leading others, and we just go through each one of these, building great teams, motivating others. These are tools that we've been able to start using. And if you're a little fuzzy on these, there's great stuff out on the website to go back and pull some of this information back up. Today, hopefully we're going to provide a couple of very personal tools that will help you pull this all together. And the first thing that we're going to discuss, I'm missing a slide here. Oh, they're backwards. Let's do this one first. So, been about 7 years ago, and I felt fairly confident in my job. And I had a new manager, and he said, you know, Audrey, I want you to focus on being consciously competent. And I thought, what do you think I'm doing? That's my personal brand. So I kept thinking about what consciously competent meant. So it's like, okay, I'm consciously doing my job well. But lo and behold, I went out there and checked on the internet, and there is a model for competence and for being consciously competent. And it was developed in the 70s by Noel Burke, and he had 4 stages. A 5th one was added. And I want you to think about how many of you are in mid-management roles? Anybody? Mid-management? Think about whatever level you're in, and think about maybe even your newest job. Stage 1, I don't know what I don't know. So many times I've stepped into a situation and thought, got this nailed. I own this. But then I find out I'm beginning to know what I don't know. Some of that has to do with the people that I work with, the requirements of the job. So I'm beginning to know what I don't know. Stage 3, I'm starting to get it. I'm starting to figure out what I need to do and learning how I need to do it. Stage 4, I've now moved from writing with my left hand to my right hand. I simply go because I know. And then stage 5 is where I take what I know and I help others move to stage 4. So that was the 5th one. It was not originally part of that competence model. So what I'm hoping that we can take away from this is there's some new things that I need to think about when I go into interactions with employees, with colleagues, with family, with friends. And I'm going to use those tools, and they're not going to feel particularly well. But at least I've moved past stage 1. I don't know what I don't know. And there is another style there that I think goes, I don't know what I don't know, and I don't care. And I don't think that's anybody in this room. But I think at times we have run across individuals like that. So let me go back so I can show the model. There. So this was the model in its more professional format. We start up in the upper left-hand corner and we go unconscious incompetence. So I'm unconsciously incompetent, so that really makes me at least feel better about myself, I think. But you are unaware of the skill and your lack of proficiency. Anybody have thoughts on unconscious incompetence? I think as a teenager, right in my 16 to 18 years of age, I could have fallen easily in that category. I pretty much was sure I was mature, responsible, and knew what life expected of me. And then, somewhere along the line, you start transitioning from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent. And this is a dangerous phase to be in, because you start to recognize your faults. And you can go a couple of ways with those. You can start working on them, or they can make you just feel bad about yourself. That's when you begin to realize, I'm not as good at this as I thought I was going to be. This isn't as good a fit as I thought it was going to be. I have some self-doubts here. I'm questioning myself. I'm questioning the organization. And then you have to kind of move from there to, but what am I going to do about it? I'm going to become proficient. So then you move over here to consciously competent. You are able to use the skill, but it takes effort. Okay? So I can now write my name with my left hand, but I have to think about every word that I'm writing, or every letter that I'm writing. And then at some point, that flips from conscious competence to unconscious competence, where you just become a performance skill and it becomes automatic. Now, why would my boss, the man I'm reporting to, ask me to move from unconscious competence to conscious competence? Let's use a sports analogy because it's easier than pulling everything out from the inside here. How many of you have ever seen a baseball coach who has taken a really good batter and changed his form? Have you ever watched that, or a good football player or a runner or something like that, and they said, your form is all bad. I want you to try this, you can do better. I've seen that. We have 4 sons that have played baseball, 3 of them at the college level, and one of them was just like an amazing hitter in high school, and his first year in college they said, here's the deal, you need to relearn. You've got to rethink how you hit the ball. And honestly, I'd go to these games and I'd watch my son strike out all the time. And going, what's this coach done to my son? He's ruined him. But do you know what he was trying to do? He was trying to force him to become better. Because where the skills, what he was doing right now, would never push him up any further unless he relearns the skill, becomes consciously competent again, and then moves it up. And I think life does this to us. And it may even push us to go all the way back again. first job. You've been on your first job for a while, say 5 years. Did you feel like you had it handled pretty well? And what did your second job do to you? You took your first job skills with you, but it didn't feel like it was quite so handled, right? And in fact, if it was from being a good performer to now a good manager, there was a whole different set of skills. You just thought, I'll walk in, I'll be that donkey leading, and all the sheep will follow, right? And then you turn around and the sheep are in the onions, or the sheep are in the melons, or the sheep aren't following you. And so I think life, opportunity, challenges push us back and forth on this. And I think we can push ourselves back and forward. Especially if we realize we keep going into the same situation and coming out with that feeling that maybe I didn't manage this quite as well as I wanted to. That we drop back and we start looking at what set of skills am I taking into this and how can I get better. One of the best object lessons I ever saw about this, I thought about 3 o'clock in the morning and I was just too tired to get up and do it. So I'm going to try and visually describe it so you just feel it and sense it. All the object lesson was two 2x4s with long framing nails just barely pounded in, just barely in. And the first thing they did is they said, take off your shoe and pound that nail in. Worked hard but never got the nail in. The next one they gave him a framing hammer. You know what happened? One thing, and it was all the way through. And so what I'm hoping that these skills that we're looking at today, you can say, okay, I'm going to take my shoe off and I'm going to start using my framing hammer. And these are some of those things that we're trying to learn. So we're going to be moving from I don't know what I don't know. And we're going to use some models. And these models, so I'm going to probably, let's take a moment here and say, because this is about practice, we're going to have at least a half hour for you to get with the team and take one of these objectives or one of these challenges that we see in the workplace and use these tools and then report back to the group on what it felt like to use the tools and also how you would use the tools. So the first one is the energy map, and I was introduced to this in the Pathways to Leadership. It was really a great learning opportunity for me. So the energy map has two sides, the back side and the front side. In our previous class, they said the dark side. Star Wars is out there. So I want you to think about in your life, in your job, in whatever you're doing, how much time are we spending on the back side? And we do have to spend some time back there. If not, we start looking a little bit like Pollyanna. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm sure we can fix this. We won't acknowledge what it is, we're just going to fix it. So on the back side, what's not working, problems, what I don't like, I don't prefer fault and blame. I prefer to say what went wrong and why didn't it work. So on the back side, you've got this, and it tends to be negative energy. On the front side, you start looking about, okay, what is working? What is working? What potential solutions do I see for those problems? What do I like? What can we learn? What's our objective and how to get there? I have a question for you. Where do you think our society is right now on the energy map? Backside. What's not working? What are our problems? What don't I like? Who's at fault or to blame? And why won't it work? Why it won't work? We live in a society that, at least according to our media, is on the backside. And we're headed into an election year. So, if we constantly function on that backside, all it does is it sucks the energy right out of us. Emotionally, physically, and quite frankly, I can feel it. I feel it in my chest. I have this kind of anger, edgy anger thing to me. Some people, it's just like, I'm not engaged. I'm not talk to the hand. But whatever being on the backside looks like to you, it has physical ramifications. Now, on the front side, because we have acknowledged there's something wrong now, and if we stay here, we're never going to fix it. We're always going to stay on the back side. We have to move here, and we should spend about 75% of our time figuring out how we're going to make this work. So when you use this model in your problem solving, do acknowledge we need to go to the back side. We need to acknowledge that there is something wrong. Something that needs to be fixed. A challenge. However you want to phrase that, there's something not right. But we want to spend most of our time over here. And many times, we will focus on the one thing that's wrong and ignore the 9 things that are right. So one of the things that I have always liked about the energy map is that it forces me to go, oh, maybe your life isn't quite so bad. What is going right about your life? Or what is going right about this situation? It forces us to move from, you might say, this is the victim over here, and this is the person who's going to take charge. So, thoughts on the energy map? Any questions? Does it sound like it works to you? Seems somewhat intuitive, right? You can also see some of those situations that we talked about up there. Where do you think passive-aggressive behavior falls in the energy map? They tend to be over here. They seem to be over here, but they're really over here, right? So it's also a map that can help you understand behavior. Well, to analyze behavior. I'm not sure I ever truly understand behavior, but to analyze behavior. So the next one then is the problem-solving model. It's one that we use all the time, but somehow seeing it on a piece of paper somehow validates it a little bit. And you plan right to left, and you implement left to right. So, objectives. Remember, we've moved from the far side, or the back side of the energy map, and we're now over here on the front side of the energy map. The very first thing I do is, so what do I want to see? What is the solution? What is the behavior? What is my objective? What needs to be done? So what's my objective? What needs to be done? And what tools or skills do I need to do it? And this is where I prefer to use the hammer instead of my shoe. So, and then you start implementing using skills or tools. You do what needs to be done, and hopefully you achieve your objective, or you rethink it again. Now this step right here is really this, writing your name with your left hand. It feels awkward. Normally I would go in with guns blazing and we'd get this thing solved in 5 minutes. But it's not really solved. It's just simmering. So this is really the writing with the left hand, or the right hand if you're left hand dominant. Which, by the way, left hand dominant baseball players have 2 steps closer to 3. Okay, this is another one. This is not so much a tool as an acknowledgement. How many of you have even heard of the term doofus? Kind of an old term. So, can anybody describe a doofus for me? Cody? Really what this is saying is anybody that I don't resonate with very well. You know, you've seen them, that cocky kid, or that arrogant such and such, or whatever, or the one that you think, I don't think they could have a good, they would have recognized a good idea if they walked in the door. I'm being a little bit more, I'm not usually quite like this. I'm trying to use these. But now, let's say this individual has a good idea. What do I do with that good idea? No, it's not a good idea. Because that would mean my doofus is not a doofus, right? Which would mean I'm wrong. So how many of you ever go into meetings and you got the crowd you like, you got the crowd you tolerate, and you've got the crowd that you just don't resonate with? The crowd you like invariably comes up with 10 good ideas. The one in the middle, you're not, you'll go either way. And the other side, you go, oh, how could they have possibly thought that? However, if that idea had been brought up by your close friends, you'd have gone, wow, that's a stunning idea. And I think the doofus in principle, you can really, if we want to see it in action, let's look at our two houses of our government. If the Republicans have a great idea, what do the Democrats do with it? Oh, it's not a good idea. And vice versa, if the Democrats have a great idea, what do the Republicans do with it? Oh, that's going to cost too much money. This is alive and well. And what we need to do is recognize it when we're feeling it ourselves. Because it could be that an individual comes into the office, and I have already clicked from, I'm willing to listen to, what a doofus. And so I never really truly hear what they're saying. For me, a little bit of story on this. When I was in the classroom that this principal was taught in, and we were there for 2 weeks. They were trying to change our behavior, let me tell you. My biggest doofus was in the room with me. And so here I have to acknowledge he's not, I did do a gender thing. He's not a doofus, and part of the problem is me. What a great learning opportunity for me. And I actually have a little stick person hanging by my computer, so that I try and remind myself, am I giving everyone the benefit of the doubt? Or have I let my bias, my prejudice, whatever going on inside me, negate everything they have to say? So if I have a person that I believe is lazy and always late, they come in with a reason, what am I thinking? Lazy, always late. Right? I don't even hear what they're saying. So this is not so much as a tool. You could say it is. It's a self-awareness tool. So be aware of what your biases and prejudices of an individual does to your interaction. I shared this. I want to make sure we have plenty of time. I shared this with the previous group, and I'll share it with this group. My first move from being a performer to a manager was about, say, almost 20 years ago. I was so excited for it until I got to my first thing, and the guy leaving said, and oh, by the way, here's all the performance problems. And I've been, just a performer, happy to have lunch with him, not into the problem. He said, but this one on the top handed me the thing. She's out of here. She's on the 2 strikes, you're out. You'll be the one that finally gets to get rid of her. And you're going, wow, okay, all right. And what it was is she habitually came in late. She appeared to be always tired, and just appeared to the group not to be a great performer. Always late. Even if you told her, she might improve for 2 or 3 days, and then she was always late. A little bit about the group themselves. These folks are from an agricultural community. They're used to getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, being there at 6, and being home by 3. That's their ideal work. So, these new managers, they have to work longer hours because they're consciously incompetent now. They realize they're falling further and further and further behind. And what I noticed is, although she came in about 9 o'clock, at 6:30 or 7, when I was rolling out the door, she was still there. The problem was, all the early risers had gone home 3 or 4 hours later. They just assumed she rolled out the door as soon as they left, right? So I began to see that my doofus was changing. Certainly the lazy didn't apply anymore. And I was having a struggle with trying to figure out terminate or move forward because she was so late. And the clock watchers were going, did you realize she was 15 minutes late today? Did you know it was a half hour today? So there was some passive aggressive behavior going on there too. So what I did was I took her to lunch, and that was before the days of where full disclosure was less or more easily done. But what she explained to me was that she was on antidepressant medication, and that it made it hard for her to get up in the morning, and also she had no family, and it was difficult to go home to an empty house at night. Whoa! Did my dynamics change right there? The problem was the group I was working with, their dynamics didn't change. They didn't have part of that dialogue. And some of them might have said, that's an excuse. So I bet it took me 3 weeks to come up with a solution. And it came in the middle of the night. And what was really interesting is the clock watchers, by the way, they're getting frustrated because their manager's not acting on this, right? I am allowing bad behavior. So there's some stuff going on. And in the middle of the night, the explanation came to me. Okay, our early mornings can handle the East Coast and Europe, but our late one can handle the West Coast and Asia. So what I did was I walked into the next meeting and I said, here's the deal. We're going to have to be open from 6 till 7:30 at night. 6 in the morning till 7:30 at night. Who wants to cover the late shift? The dynamics changed immediately. Because what do our early risers want to do with this? This is not their game. They don't want to play this game. They have things that they do. They have families. And guess who raised her hand and said, I would love to take the late shift. The dynamics in the group changed because there was a business need, because there was an understanding of the individual, and we were able to pull something together to make that work. But this is my first frame of reference. And admittedly, I might have taken longer than I should have, and the group was getting anxious. You know what I mean? They were wanting some kind of movement on this, which at times is kind of difficult to manage. So, this then leads me to the 5 whys. This is normally something that you use in OE, operational excellence, or something along those lines, but it works very well with people as well. If we take the situation, the problem was the employee was always what? Late, tired, and appeared to not be working hard. By the way, she started getting in tune about 3 o'clock in the afternoon because of... So, the first thing was, why is she late? Why? And it made it all the way through. And oh, by the way, I don't like to come home to an empty house. So had I made my decision on what I was going to do on the first why, my group probably would have been very happy with me. Oh, look at that. She got in and solved that problem immediately. But it wasn't the right solution because we had a good performer in a bad situation. So notice again why this is so much writing with our left hand, right? Number one, I don't want to give the person the benefit of the doubt. And number two, I really don't want to spend the time to get the 5 whys. I just want to act. So these are our primary tools that we're going to be using as we move forward. This is one that I have contemplated on since I read the article, it's been about 3 or 4 years ago. The unhappiest employees in an organization are the middle managers. And this was based on an article by Zenger and Folkman, and it was called Why Are Middle Managers so unhappy, and it was found in Harvard Business Review. And I should have given you, if you wanted to look at it, I should have given you the references. If anybody needs the references, I can get it for you. So in the middle of everything. So you have from one side, let's give an example. From this side, you hear we have to be in cost-cutting measures because we're not doing well with our gross margin. From this side, I am overworked and I can't keep this up. And by the way, I haven't had a raise for 5 years. So here's this person sending the information both ways. Then, any other ideas why middle managers tend to be maybe not as happy as some others? Anybody fall in that category? Recognition. The last one to be recognized, if anything goes right, who did it? The CEO, right? Or your boss or whatever. And the first one to go if somebody does something wrong. So everybody that's a middle manager, if you don't already know this, here's the blunt facts. You're more likely to be fired for something somebody else did than what you did. So that's exactly right. So it all kind of stops here. You don't get the recognition, but you do get plenty of the blame. It can range from not enough resources to do the impossible to a lot of different things. So how do we move, or how do we make sure that we don't become that disengaged, unhappy employee? And also, what does that middle manager do to his team? When the middle manager is the disengaged, unhappy employee, what does that do to the team? So then again, it goes back to that. You could use the models for this. First of all, you realize here I am. Second of all, you start moving over to how am I going to get out of this? One of them could be, as a middle manager, I don't know how many of you, when you go to school and you work hard, there is only one place you need to be, and that's continually moving up, right? But at some point, there's only so much further that you can move up. And that's pretty much at middle management when you start thinking about it. There may be 25 middle managers and five really high managers. So you have to start being content with where you are. The second one is excellence. Here's where I am, and I'm going to do the best job I possibly can. And I'm going to do that by learning more. And again, remember that whole thought process that we went through? It doesn't have to be education like formal. It's we're going through that incompetently incompetent, or unconsciously incompetent. Now we become consciously incompetent. Then we start looking for consciously competent. Commitment, honor my commitment, and exploration. So I'm going to tell a personal story. My husband at 28 was diagnosed with choroideremia, which causes blindness. He was playing baseball at the time. That kind of cut that career off. And it held pretty good for a while. And lately now, he has very little vision. And for a while, he spent some time, admittedly, on that dark side, right? To be a little bit over the prime of life, but not too much. And to lose your sight is a difficult thing. So I came home, it's been about a year ago, and there was this really bizarre package laying on the bed. It was a ukulele. And I said, oh, really? You used to play the guitar when you was younger? And he said, yeah. I decided to start playing the ukulele because it's a happy instrument, and I like it. The other things are, it doesn't matter if you're blind or not, you can still play the ukulele. So he has, over the last year, done a remarkable job of teaching himself how to play the ukulele, and is going to start taking lessons so he can get better. He can't change his situation. He has to be content, look for excellence, so he has to change the parameters because that situation is not changing. And in fact, it's probably going a way that he doesn't want it to go. So this stuff works not only in the business arena, but it works personally when we feel like we can't control situations. So what we're going to try and do is we have 4 groups. And I would like, okay, so each, we only have 2 in that group there. 2, 3, 3. So, Cody, you can 3, 3. Could we get one of the guys to, Lowell, could you move with Lorena and Julie? And we have this. So we're going to go with 3. We're going to go with the groups. Group 1, you're going to do interpersonal conflict, communication problems, and gossip. These are the ones that you're going to use these tools on. As you're doing it, don't just think about you're dealing with gossip. Make up a situation about gossip, okay? Make it a little bit more intense. Group 2, bullying and harassment, disintegration, low motivation, and job satisfaction. These are big ones. And you look at what's in here, and you can got that covered. Group 3, you get our passive-aggressive behavior, hiding behind emails, performance issues, and perhaps poor job fit. So that's the ones that you're going to address. And group 4, having to always be right, emotional competence, and micromanagement. Do we need to, we all know what emotional competence is, or the lack thereof. We've all seen it in action. We've all been it in action. So for the next half hour, get in your groups and do as many of those scenarios as you can, and use the tools as much as you can. And Scott came in and helped to get up on not every computer, but one for each group, so you could have the tools that you could reference back to. So what you're going to do is you're going to create a situation, so you're not just working from, I'm working with interpersonal conflict. This is what interpersonal conflict looks like in our situation. You're going to come up with a situation. You're going to use the tools to help you get through it, all of them. Every one of the tools you're going to use to get through it. And then have a spokesperson, and we're going to allow 15 minutes, hopefully, to have whatever it takes for you to talk about what it was to use those skills and tools. Were there any aha moments? Did you think of any similar situations that you have been in, or maybe it's been in the past, or perhaps you're kind of working through right now? So again, back to our goal on this is to give you the tools to solve those difficult situations. So can I rank it, Scott? So everybody, yeah. Because if I were to say, now use all 3 of those tools, would anybody go, what are they? What exactly were they? So that's really, we want to be able to have those tools visible for you. So groups, you can start getting together in your complement and your configurations here. And I am available for comments if you need anything. And I might just butt in anyway. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the problem solving, the 5 whys, um, the Dukas principle, and then all the ducks, and then the energy map.
Okay.
And I would start with the energy map, kind of. That would be my
Start with the
Yes. So as you're looking through it, which ones did you have? You had micromanagement and always having to be right. I would develop a scenario. Maybe one that you've had a boss that's been a micromanager, has a need to always be right. You know, maybe start developing some of those things. And then as you go through it, then you do your 5 whys, then you can really start inventing the story more. Well, why is he a micromanager? Why does he always have to be right? Why? You know, so that is the first energy map. You can kind of lay out what the problem is that you're trying to solve. And then really when you move over to this side is when you would go into this and start thinking about the solutions and the 5 whys.
So energy map, development, and plotting.
Yes. And I subconsciously, I go here, recognizing that I'm trying to figure out what I feel about this person. And so I don't really consciously use the Dukas model. It's just, I've got that little icon there to go think about what that brings. So it's those 3 tools.
Okay. So figure out where they lay on the energy map.
Mm-hmm. And where you are, too.
Where we are.
Mm-hmm.
Figure out why they're doing it. And find out the solution.
Because if you think about it, if you have a manager that micromanages, where's the rest of the team? They're probably way on that, unless you've got one of those real we can make this happen type of folks. I think this is Scott. Yeah, I just noticed it when it went off. Oh. So in terms of timing, we have about 5 minutes to wrap up, and if anybody needs a break, please feel free to take a break, and then we'll start with the presentations at right at 11. And we'll start with group 4. So we'll reverse. So did you get that group 4? We're going to start with you and reverse the, so you read first, yeah. Yeah, that's right. Pig Latin. I was never very backwards. I was never good at Pig Latin. I always tried to pick that up, but I couldn't do the ixnay on the whatever's name or whatever. And we are going to share, so Scott mentioned just changing, giving the mic as they were presenting, so we'll just take this off and you can have that too. Did you name a... Okay. I was just going to tell you, we're going to be taping the sessions, so I'll just hand the tape recorder or the audio stuff to whoever's sitting there. Cody will talk. Okay. Okay, we're wrapping up, and we're going to start presenting in 5 minutes. You get nominated?
Take it away. So our group had a scenario of a supervisor at the warehouse who displayed a number of these qualities, or lack thereof. They were recently promoted to the position. They were the type that was pleased with their accolades, pleased with their skills, pleased with everything that got them to that position, but wouldn't let go and allow the people working for them to take on the duties of their position. So this guy would constantly undermine the efforts and the good work of his employees by pointing out small flaws and things that they had done wrong. So with that, we broke everything down, and we were looking at the energy map, and obviously on the dark side of the circle, there was a serious issue with employee morale. That was not working out. The people were constantly coming to work and leaving upset. They didn't really have a lot of job confidence or job satisfaction. Their confidence in their work was low, and just they were generally unhappy to be at work when they were working with this person. So, in order to, look at the positives, if you will, the product of all of this was that this guy did get the work done. I mean, he got the result. He got the job that he wanted out of the people working for him. The productivity stayed high, and they accomplished what they were setting out to do. But in terms of how to take those positives and generate a better environment, the people affected by all of this were kind of the middle managers between the main supervisor and the day-to-day workers. So the middle managers, the people feeling kind of the heat, they needed to find a way to coach the people who work for them in order to provide that same result without passing on the frustrations. So better training, better communication on the part of the middle management people was something that could generate a positive in order to change the outcome. So when we went back over to the whys, we were able to see that this guy was likely feeling some sort of pressure himself by taking on this new position, and that his pressure was translating through him into the people who he worked for him. He was competitive at all phases of his career, and that competitiveness drove him to want to be the best at his position, but also the best within the network of warehouses. So his desire to be competitive, he was channeling through himself into the people who worked for him. So that was just, they were feeling the product of it, and they weren't really understanding why. And he might have actually been using himself the doofus principle when thinking about the people who work for him. Part of his lack of emotional competence or his micromanagement was that he didn't have any faith in people who weren't him. And so when he was setting out to respond to his employees, he was doing it in a way where he didn't really value their efforts. So with the problem-solving model, we recognized that we needed a better team morale. We needed, on the far right side, we needed to accomplish the same things but under better conditions. The ways that we did that was to find a way to instill the teamwork mentality. And working with a supervisor, somebody who ranks higher than you, it kind of is unnatural in certain ways, but promoting the team effort, showing through their work with the people who they were, the middle managers, the people who were working for them, that was an important thing for them to understand that it was a team thing, and they were leading by example for their supervisor to see. They also needed to have patience. They had to understand that there were certain things outside of their control, but the one thing that they were able to control was their direct reports. So they insulated them from some of this stuff. They shouldered a lot of it because they didn't want to undermine management and people who worked for them. But ultimately, the goals and the successes that everybody shared were just compromised by the personality type of the leader. So. As we were working through it, we obviously started with the problem, and the problem that this guy was a tyrant. But when you're looking at how this affects you, you can kind of see that your own personal struggles with how your situation is might actually be relatable to the person that's creating your problem. So him being new to his position, the whys really did help. Understanding what would motivate this person to be the way that they are. Doesn't make it okay, it just makes it a little bit more overcomable. You can navigate it with some skill that you might not have had if you were just judging them at face value.
We, instead of making up a scenario, we went a little different route. Picked two items, real world ones that are actually happening. One fell into looking at the performance issue of an employee who, ever since they've been hired for the last several months, is repeatedly late. Not by a lot, 2-3 minutes, but it's to a point where it's always being noticed by other team members. Their boss has talked to the employee numerous times. Hey, you need to start being more on time. It's affecting everybody. They don't notice it. Trying to look at the whys of it, go through the whys. The person would be on time for a little while, but then be late. So the boss said, okay, let's look at something a little different. Let's shift them up an hour. Obviously, there's things in their lives that are precedents or keeping them from being on time. Shifted them up from an 8 o'clock standpoint to a 9 o'clock or start time to a 9 o'clock start time. Problem persisted. Never once has changed. So using the tools, going through, trying to work with the employee, one thing that I had noticed is that, and we talked about it, one, the whys were more self-wise. Why is that person doing it? Come up with their own reasons as to why. And then making changes based against that without directly involving the person. Later on, they were involved, but there is not a good reason why. So I don't know. I don't know if it's a perpetual answer. Julie pointed out that some people have a behavior that always leads towards a common outcome. In this case, always going to be late, just by a few minutes. One thing that was pointed out is that the person is not held accountable until that time frame breaks a 5-minute rule. As long as they're always under 5 minutes, there's always going to be issues with employees noticing it, but never an actual issue that's going to hold them accountable. So from what I can see, there is no incentive for them to ever change. So something that came up is, that Julie pointed out, is the way Winco does it, is there's a much tighter margin, that you have rules that everyone adheres to. In this case, the rule that the company adheres to for write-ups is 5 minutes, but the rules that the employees kind of follow is 1 or 2 minutes. That's a disparity between the two. There's always going to be problems and conflicts there until they align. That was one of the scenarios we come up with. Anything else that could be tried to try and narrow that, help the person out?
I know we had but one thing kind of way I felt are, I mean, I know it's like somewhat like post whatever it is, and the reason we said is because we were requiring them to do that job that they're going to be doing at 7. So they were saying, oh, but this job's not posted right. Yeah, when we first started doing it, we posted it right. And started now we're posted in terms of that way. They need to be there. They need to be ready. But I mean, I don't know if that works for you guys.
That's one of the. So the policy is more of a, sort of, the policy is more of a, they don't really know that 5 minutes is okay. They're more of 9 o'clock is 9 o'clock. So like for instance, when I did performance appraisals, on their appraisal, it said on there, this is how many parties you had, but these are how many were counted. So they have like this number, outrageous, and then they had what was below the so this is a new person, so she hasn't had not even so I'm literally trying to help her by starting to tell her, hey, but she's a great performer. She does, her job is great, professional, great. And I was telling you guys that I even did it the opposite one time, and I emailed her and I said, thank you. haven't. I haven't like.
How you
Done that one and set your alarm for a certain time, or leave the house 5 minutes
But
earlier.
you have to have first on the time. You don't want to give any input on set your clock for 15 minutes. No, she has to know that you have to have any interaction.
Yeah, she knows. Her whole team. Sometimes it's the opposite. No, she even asked me when I met with. She even asked me. She said, "Do we get a leeway of being late?" And I said, "No, you don't. You're late. You're supposed to be here at 9 o'clock. That means 9 o'clock, ready to go." Then I'll use that one where. It's funny though because when you check references, that's one of the questions that we ask about the employee and is the person comfortable and they're like, oh yeah. Why did you do this? Yeah. Well, all four of them have so. Well, that's why I've been doing it, now instead of waiting for the 6 months because I don't ever want anybody to go to an appraisal and hear something that they've never heard before. So that's why I just thought it was to a point.
We had a couple different real scenarios that we went through on like bullying and harassment. And what I usually find is, I mean, this is something I literally deal with every day, but is that there's always more to the story. So we had a situation where it started as a customer complaint about what was going on between employees in one of our deli departments, and ended up, it just seemed odd to the manager, and so she started investigating, and then the employee at that point kind of said, well, I'm being harassed, and I don't know who you're getting these anonymous customer complaints, but here's some other things I'm experiencing. Somebody had put his information on Craigslist, like in a bad ad with his real phone number. So he was experiencing some sort of other internet type harassment. And so in going through the different models, like I think the one that helps me the most on this is like the problem solving model. So, okay, so, what is the objective? And the objective is to kind of find out what's going on, what is the truth behind this complaint. And then what needs to be done on that was really, identifying all the participants and gathering all the facts. So there's always a lot more to the story, and sometimes it's way too much that you don't want to know. But but my job, I think, is weird that way. So hopefully nobody else has some of that. But so it came out, like I said, managers are used to getting these complaints, and so a lot of times it's a customer who will directly talk to them at the store, or the customer will provide their phone number. Yes, call me about the situation. I'd like to discuss it. But these were very vague, internet, no phone number given, no contact information provided kind of complaints. And then this employee was saying, well, I am being harassed, and there's a situation on Craigslist, and then it came out the relationship that he had with his coworker who he was alleged to have called this name. And so now the manager's sitting with them talking about their fling that they had. I mean, she didn't want to know that, but that's what comes up. And then, so then we have to try and figure out, well, is it the other employee who's harassing him? And we weren't really able to prove any of that. So by going through the steps, though, of, okay, well, our objective really was to figure out what the problem was and identify the facts. And then look at the motivation in terms of the dark side or the light side. Well, is this a work-related issue? What in this is a work-related issue and what is not? So the complaint was, he called this coworker a name, and allegedly a customer had complained about it. And that really did happen. And the employees had sort of handled it among themselves. He called her this name. She approached him and said, hey, you can't call me that, especially at work. Like, let's keep it professional. And so they had already handled it. So the outcome was sort of, okay, we're going to just remind them of our policy that they have to extend courtesy. We don't care what they do with each other in their off time, but we don't want it brought into the workplace. I know, right? It's always, well, because that's awkward that a manager has to have these conversations. And then we decided to kind of go a step further because, well, now we have all this information. Because apparently he was sleeping with this girl, and now he's sleeping with another girl, and you should find a dating pool outside the deli would be my advice. But he's allowed to do that, so that's none of Winco's business, and I don't really care. So so we also went the step of, hey, we're also going to remind you about our anti-harassment policy. So again, we don't care, it's none of our business what's happening outside the store, but here are the things that you can't bring into the store. And I think employees sometimes see that as a punishment. Oh, now I have to sit through this 3-hour anti-harassment training. But it's not a punishment. It's a chance for education. And so just so that we can hopefully prevent any further problems from happening, that's sort of how ours works. And I think the whys of, we had to get to the, well, why do you think this happened? Well, why would you think it's your coworker? Well, why? Oh. And then sometimes you ask the whys and you find out information you don't want to know, but it's relevant to solving the problem. So I think going through those why steps ends up being helpful. That was interesting. And I think bullying and harassment are kind of buzzwords. They'll say that you can't decide something to harass. You decide that you violated the code and that harassment. But really, like, it's court to decide something is still effective harassment. But employees are very quick to use that word. Well, I'm being harassed, but I think it's about why you said it. Well, because of all these parties, and then okay, well, that's not really harassment. That's where's your manager? But, like some things aren't, they aren't, well, that can be a consequence of your actions. That's not harassment. Or, well, my manager's always watching what I'm doing. Well, it's their job to make sure you get your job done. So, they don't say it's because of protected class or because of reason. That's not harassment. Employees are very
So we talked about mostly about communication, and the challenge that we discussed was the employees being willing to go to the manager or the supervisor or the lead and being comfortable with that, so that like sometimes they'd want to go around or go to the person that they knew instead of, being able to go to the manager with concerns or problems. One of them was like a supply issue, someone that needed a different supply on their desk so they could do their work better, but they were afraid to like ask for that. So it was kind of interesting using these tools. Like I jumped right to the problem solving one because that's how I am. I think, well, let's just solve the problem. But as we kind of talked through it, both like every time we'd come with a solution, it didn't really quite fit, or no, that won't really work, or we tried that. But the more questions we asked on the whys, we kept kind of going back and forth between those. It was interesting to see, like, I was trying to solve the problem before I really had all the whys. So I guess the biggest takeaway for me was you really need to keep asking those whys, and it looks like the other groups did that better than I did. I'm always kind of a in-a-hurry person. But we came up with a lot. We just came up with a lot of questions. Okay, why aren't they coming? And one of the reasons we realized was it's a natural thing to be a little bit intimidated to go to your boss. That's a natural thing, and that may or may not be something solvable. We can kind of lower the threshold and try to make it easier, but we have to accept that that may be something that's just difficult, no matter what. And so sometimes things aren't necessarily solvable. But we did, we kind of came up with a couple of ideas. One of the questions we asked was, well, who are the people that are coming, that will approach a manager? And what are their characteristics as compared to the people that aren't? And so we, just by asking a lot of questions, I think we learned a lot more about the issue. And I don't know if we really got to any solutions, but a couple of things we thought of was the ones that are coming are the ones that are comfortable with communication. Like Min had mentioned that one of the people, like she would choose him to write an email that was going to all of the different stores. She feels comfortable in his communication style. And so clearly he's got a skill or a tool there, and that allows him to come to her as well, where then we looked at the people that are challenges, and yes, those ones maybe they don't have quite the same level of skills in communication. So we talked about training, talked about other ideas that we had. Oh, right. Understanding, and this is like one of the things we'll talk about in next month's meeting, is the DISC personalities and how different people need different things to be able to communicate. For me, I was saying I'm a rule follower, so if I know this is a list of questions or these are a list of issues that my manager deals with, then I'm not afraid to go and talk to them about them because the rule says, go talk to this person about this. But unless it's like clearly defined, then I'm nervous about it. Whereas other personalities, like a D personality, probably would just think they get all the answers from whoever they need them from, and they would go to anyone, and they wouldn't have be nervous about that. So we talked about like different personalities and understanding the people in our staff and how will they feel most comfortable approaching us. And that was kind of one of those tools when we listed all of the tools that we're going over for the year. That's the one you guys do next month, so look at that, a lot of you. And then I think the one other thing we talked about was, I went back to something that Abase said at a meeting like several months ago about just having set aside time. And that didn't really work in our situation because there was too many people, but he says that one of his boss had set aside an hour a week or something. I mean, it was significant. I don't know how he did this, but an hour a week for them to talk, and that really lowered the threshold and improved communication. So we thought if there was some way that like these people that aren't coming had like a set in stone time, then that might be a good solution too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just know that there's a place for it and that it's expected and that it's okay. So,
I know. Yeah. Well, I know at the warehouse, so kind of one of the things that they've got us doing, which I think is kind of cool, is So they want us out on the dock, and so what we're kind of doing is walking through the aisles and talking to all of our employees just to try to break that, uncomfortableness, kind of, and get more on a personal level as far as, hey, if we find out if they have kids or not or whatever, and kind of, just try to be a little more friendly, because sometimes it's not necessarily that it's kind of more of the vibe that we're putting off in the office or wherever we happen to be, is that maybe we are a little bit more closed than maybe that we think we actually are. So sometimes it's not necessarily on them, it's more on us, because we're not really putting it out there. And I know at Winco we have an open door policy where we welcome the employees to come in and talk to us whenever needed, but they still are apprehensive, because sometimes, all of a sudden we're the person that's always disciplining everybody, and so when they're coming into the office, it's never on the positive side of it. So they've got us actually going out more and, just communicating with them and seeing how they're doing, how their day's going, and, are there other problems? And that's something I've always tried to stress anytime I have talked to anybody, whether it's been positive or negative side of it, is, anytime you feel that, you need to talk to you need to talk to me or anybody, our door's always open. Whether it's you just need to vent, come talk to me. I'd rather have you vent behind closed doors so you can say whatever you please, versus being out on the floor spreading something negative to other employees, which will become like a cancer. And as that's kind of something we've kind of really been working on. I know at the warehouse, and something I've always tried to work on. Is, matter of fact, last week I had the conversation with an employee, kind of seeing how what it's like out there on the floor. Just because when a manager comes up, it's people really watch what they say. Versus, I mean, you've got the couple guys that feel more comfortable as you start talking to them, and then all of a sudden they loosen up. But there's a lot of people out there that, no matter how much you talk to them, it's always going to be real tight and kind of watch what you say. And that's kind of one thing we were trying to break at the warehouse, is trying to get everybody kind of loosened up to where they do feel they can approach us about anything, whether it's personal, work related. Just an ear to listen and not say a word. There's different things, of course. That's just something we've been working on.
Okay, so first of all, thank you, everyone. Those were very well done. The next step for the next half hour is to now take things on an individual level, find your most difficult work situation or personal situation, and try and come up with the tools to try and resolve that. So that is the assignment. That is for this week. With that said, are there any other questions, thoughts before we close? For me, and I think it's true for all of us, dealing with other people is probably the most difficult thing we can do. We know how we feel, but we don't know how other people feel. I would challenge you in your next most heated discussion, see if you can utilize some of these skills. I had one a couple of weeks ago that I wished I would have, I kind of went more to the dark side pretty quickly. The conversation stayed there, and then that repairing is much more difficult than taking care of it there. Another thing that you brought up is that you're really trying to get out in the warehouse, be more available to talk to. That, in and of itself, minimizes passive-aggressive behavior. Because one of the most common passive-aggressive behaviors is for you to say to Cody, and then what's Cody's responsibility? She can either just sit on it or take it up to somebody, right? And I could be saying it to two different reasons. One, I just need to vent. The other one is I want her to be my vehicle to take this on because I don't feel comfortable in that. So, I don't know if it helped for you, but I do know that when I sit down and start working on this stuff for the lesson, it always helps me. So I'm going to start practicing something other than just the business. So anyway, thank you. Are there questions about the next steps, about making it personal and utilizing it. Anybody not have a bad situation? Well done. Then work on making the group overall better. So if you're at that good place, then don't look at a negative part. Look at, okay, I'm out on the floor now. How can I make that interaction better? Because I want these guys to feel like they trust me. So it can be that approach too. Beth, thank you for sharing. Those are tough things. Yeah.